Greetings world. We are on DK. In 2016 we have seen the elite changing hands, especially as the Jubilee has ended. However, leaders have been changing very fast indeed, especially in the final months of 2016, since you were all distracted with pipelines and protests and pizza and war, and we could go on and on. There is an endless amount of distractions. We often forget to look at the game as a whole. The world is connected because of the elite's control, whether we call it a one world government yet or not. Without seeing how the other pieces of the game are moved and in place, we cannot expect to know enough to be prepared, or to simply have a basic knowledge of the bigger picture. So let us take a look at what has been very likely missed, because there is so much. We will just look at 13 countries. These countries have had significant elections during November and December of 2016. There have been a number of power changes. The new president elected in Europe's poorest country, Moldova, is Igor Dodon. His opponent, former World Bank advisor Maia Sandu, is now claiming voting fraud and demanding a recount. Earlier this year, about 40,000 of the remaining 3 million citizens protested, demanding new leaders after corruption was exposed in 2009. Since then the country has been in political and economic turmoil. Revolutions and many have left. A portion of the country is attempting to break away entirely. The prime minister was replaced after protests with Pavel Filip, who claims to be the right-hand man of Vlad Plahotniuc, Moldova's most powerful businessman with ties to Russian mafia. Like Trump, Vlad has built a grand hotel which is used as a front for the Russian mafia to traffic women from Ukraine and Moldova. The women are used to blackmail politicians and businessmen through a club named Drive. Pavel Filip stated he intends to stabilize Moldova's crumbling economy and fight corruption. Of course, like every country with economic issues today, they will rely on IMF to bail them out. President-elect Igor Dodon rejected an EU trade agreement and leans for harmony with Russia. Igor, who will fight corruption, must start with his own. Since 2006 he received a monthly salary equivalent to $1,665 from several institutes, though he did not work at them. By the time he was found out, he had damaged the state budget by $831,250. The case was terminated. His lifestyle and extravagance in such a poor country suggests, if not proves, he has much more money than that. There are also some shady dealings in the meat and wine industry and offshore company sales. Regarding Igor and his influence in trade, along with his brother and his brother-in-law, all in the family, he is trying to have parliament elections held in early 2017. We shall see what happens. Over in Bulgaria, the newly elected president Rumen Radev, a former NATO fighter pilot who studied at the U.S. Air War College in Alabama, sounds more like another American Don. However, he resigned after NATO tried to further its occupation. Typical NATO, though as of now the woman seems to desire closer ties to Mother Russia, and more distance from NATO, and has expressed to EU to lift sanctions on Russia. Bulgaria, sadly like most, has been so corrupted since joining NATO and the EU that its economy has been dissolved as well and has no choice but to remain. Once it was broken from Soviet control and the country's government and economy were uprooted. The Romas who were integrated into society are now not taken care of any longer. Now there is division and poverty and much organized crime. Because the crime and corruption is allowed to run rampant because of the corruption in the government, police, justice system, and more. Over the past few years there have been many protests have taken place, including 6 men who individually and at different times lit themselves on fire and burned to death in protest against the government's abuse of power and corruption. Because of the poverty, women and children are easily lured into the human trafficking rings there. An estimated 10,000 annually are sold. Many pregnant women travel to other countries to have and sell their babies. Primarily Greece's traffickers will help them get there for a fee typically paid with sex. 3 or 4 traffickers hold the whole Greek market. They sell 5 to 6 babies per month. Bulgaria can only get the small assistance it does by continuing to allow the occupation of the American NATO. Many countries are in the same boat, all sailing up shit creek without a paddle, simply because the leaders are all bought and paid for by the elite. Rumen Radev was called a rising star in a letter from the Soviet embassy in 2009. We will see if the star continues rising. Italy's youngest Prime Minister, Matteo Renzi, resigned after his referendum to reduce powers in the Senate failed miserably. He told the public he would leave if his latest did not pass, and shortly after it failed to pass, 50,000 protesters took to the street in a violent clash with police. After 2 years of being a pushover and lapdog of Obama and Merkel, the citizens had had enough spinelessness. For decades Italy has attempted to create some government structure that would work. So far it remains unsuccessful. The economy is beginning to crumble as the banks are beginning to close. It is unclear what Italy is doing as far as elections go at this point. In New Zealand, PM John Key resigned after a lengthy term. Member of the Bohemian Grove and a high-level Mason, his past as an investment banker working for Merrill Lynch has been much exposed, including after the market crashed his sale of New Zealand dollars offshore. He has done much for big banking all over the world. Needless to say, he is well connected. His term has been marked by epic defeats and numerous apologies and spending over $20 million on referendums to change the flag. It resulted in no flag change. New Zealand is now in a currency bubble that will soon pop. Currency is an illusion, and as the elite change hands, change the puppets, change the cultures, they of course are going to change all currencies. All in all, everyone is relieved the disaster of banking puppet John Key is finally over. We have yet to see who will replace him. But never fear. He seems to be used to changing hats. Surely he will be just fine. South Korea has just impeached puppet President Park Geun-hye after a massive scandal resulting in protests. President Park Sr. was a very close friend of the cult leader Choi Tae-min. This likely have led to his assassination. However, their daughters followed in their footsteps. Being inseparable friends, Park Sr.'s daughter, the now impeached president, was exposed having ties to the cult, as well as an email scandal like Hillary Clinton's between herself and her cult leader friend. Of course on insecure devices. Of course sending confidential papers and more. Abuse of power, coercion and fraud are a few other accusations. Another cult puppet of the elite. This led to 1.6 million protesters demanding her resignation for the last few months. Like many paid protests we see around the world, the same pre-made signs and supplies can be seen here. Also the known Korea Parent Federation, which typically uses the poor elderly who get paid to protest frequently in order to have an income, can be seen in most pictures. Prime Minister Hwang Kyo-ahn is taking her place until elections, which must be within 60 days. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, who has a long elite bloodline history, seems to be the favorite for re-election. In France we have seen the same false flag attacks in airports, shootings, the ridiculous runaway truck attack, bombings, Charlie Hebdo, and more. The same censor media, just like in UK, USA, South Korea, Bulgaria and Moldova, in most every country. The same illegal immigration flooding across their borders thanks to the American bomb squad and teamed ISIS mercenaries. France has undergone the same destruction to the foundations of the country's structure that all of tolerant Europe has. France will tell you, as many countries will, it is not multicultural, it is French, and like every other country that has been invaded by America's created migrant crisis, it would like to return to the country it is. That is an unlikely idea now. France's most unpopular president on record, President François Hollande, decided not to run for re-election. Prime Minister Zionist Manuel Valls resigned to run for the election in May 2017. He is famous for his claim that bare breasts represent freedom, burqas represent slavery. The Prime Minister position is being temporarily held by Interior Minister Bernard Cazeneuve until the elections. The theme this year seems to be, "Make our country great again." The saying can be found in news articles regarding every election we have looked at thus far. The career politician backed by companies such as France Inc. candidate François Fillon has been likened to Trump as well. Not only is he backed by big business and big changes, he wants to do away with France's 35-hour work week and change many other regulations regarding work, so companies can work people longer and harder and delete personal and social life. It is turning into another profit-focused country, like America. No more social benefits, unemployment benefits, retirement, and healthcare benefits. Marine Le Pen and Alain Juppé copyright are running in the election as well as a few others. Marine Le Pen seeks to have more French independence, less control from the EU and more control on immigration. Like many other places, France is sick of corruption and the government system they have. However, as usual, they will continue with the rigged selection for the next puppet to oversee the NATO-occupied territory. France, like Germany, is eager to create the EU army, even though the world police has already been established. Clearly the answer is more control, more military, more violence. France also declared a state of emergency this year due to its economy collapse and currency fail. Yemen President Abdurrabbou Mansour Hadi, puppet to the US and House of Saud, has officially resigned, though he fled his country in March. The Prime Minister and Cabinet attempted to keep the government going but have since resigned or been kidnapped. It has now toppled completely. The Houthis, a Shiite minority Muslim group, have overthrown the government, terrorized the country, and now have gained control of the presidential palace. This is a frequent occurrence in areas like this, with so many different and violently rigid indoctrinations. No one willing to live in peace or allow others to. The Houthis took over the capital in 2014 when a new constitution for Yemen was proposed, which would have created a Yemen federation and decentralized power. The Houthis rejected it but have no political power, so they took matter into their own hands. As is usual for them, they threw their country into civil war, because of the cowardice of politicians, who run instead of reason. There is no telling if or when they will have a government or leader again. Saudi Arabia offered to help by creating massive devastation fighting the Houthis, while they were bombing the fuck out of civilians in Yemen. Saudi Arabia was simultaneously blocking all medical, food, and other supplies to the citizens they claimed to be helping. After a 20-month conflict including mass airstrikes on citizens funded by the USA carried out by Arabia, over 10,000 people have been killed and tens of thousands of people injured. Hospitals are unable to be kept up and staffed. An estimated 1.8 million children have been unable to go to school since 2014. Needless to say, the economy is floating. The Yemen Central Bank has its ability to create something out of nothing until it completely collapses. The USA is backing this war and genocide in Yemen, while keeping the media in silence on it, because the USA must have access to the port of Aden. Free and uninhibited access is impossible with democracy. So they use the House of Saud, their fellow elites, to control the puppet rulers in the Middle East. It would be easier for the elite if Yemen was simply absorbed into Saudi Arabia. However, the groups in Yemen are expert fighters who know their terrain well. Until then, they will do what they can to continue depopulation and poverty, all with help from the UN and WHO, which hide this and many other crises. Over in Denmark, Prime Minister Lars Rasmussen, elected last year, is currently conducting the ministerial shuffle. Recently, a few ministers have created problems by trying to deceive Parliament in cleverly worded propositions. One proposition takes funding and support away from charitable duties, which have only increased thanks to the migrant flood. Another proposition increased spending on a regulated fertilizer, which is not ecologic and will create not only unneeded financial hardships, but environmental damage as well. The idiot who decided to bring that up was replaced immediately. Denmark is known for being one of the world leaders in eco-consciousness and green lifestyle. The food in Denmark is 70% organic, and like most European places, GMOs are not allowed. The ministers involved in manipulating Parliament are being investigated to see if it was an intentional deception, as it so blatantly seems. The new foreign minister is now Anders Samuelsen. He holds the anti-EU view most Danes have. Hopefully he will be able to keep EU from overstepping more boundaries. Søren Pape is the new Minister of Justice. Claus Frederiksen is continuing his lengthy political career as the new Defense Minister. Simon Emetsbøl has eagerly become the new Economy and Interior puppet. Minister after the position was discontinued last election. Brian Mikkelsen is another lifelong puppet politician and is the new Industry Minister. Fira Frank is the new Minister for the Elderly. Marit Risager, the new Minister of Education, has not held a political position long, similar to Mette Bock, who is the new Church and Culture Minister, and Mai Mercado, the new Child and Social Welfare Minister. Ellen Norby has been in Parliament for quite some time now and is the new Health Minister, another long-time politician. And the list goes on. Denmark is NATO-occupied as well as a member of EU, though it has been able to keep its currency separate, saving its economy, even after it gave its oil-rich North Sea to Norway. However, since it has a valid currency that actually has value and backing, it is being forced to follow the same suit as the dissolving euro and American dollar. If they do not regulate and devalue, and destroy everything they have, as a responsible country, worked so hard to secure, then the currency will skyrocket, making it impossible to trade, as few other countries have a backed and stable currency. Denmark's economy and well-being are intact now. Hopefully they will pull themselves out of us ass before it blows. In Ghana we see the recent election of Nana Akufo-Addo, previously a lawyer in France. He also served as an MP in Ghana until 2008. He is focused on a one district, one factory plan, where every town will have a factory in it to provide jobs for everyone and increase industry and stability. As usual, these are simply honeyed words. He was able to do more as an MP but failed to do anything at all in regards to the country's economy, education, hunger, medical care. Still, the majority of schools and other facilities remain in disrepair. All of his years able to rebuild something with nothing to show hardly seems capable of rebuilding a country. However, that was his script. No amount of protesting has changed anything. Still they have no drinkable water. Like most of Africa, still they have poor conditions for working, educating and living. Ghana, like all African countries, has rich natural resources and is the world's second largest producer of cocoa, and child labor abuse. However, when its economy collapsed last year, IMF had to bail it out. Now it will ride the bubble, like most other countries, until it pops. 7.5 million Ghanaians live on 3 Ghanaian cedi, which equals 68 euro cents. Surely there is no need to waste everyone's time on the USA selection. Needless to say, as every country mentioned here, the USA is in a state of constant paid protesting, false flags and military police. Political corruption is rampant and the citizens still do nothing. Media is censored coming in and going out of the country. Social benefits and disability are being cut. Retirement is being cut. Unemployment and crime are on the rise. Most live at the poverty level. The new middle class. Water is not drinkable in much of the country and the elections were officially exposed as rigged, which they always have been. The recent email scandal which has led to the discovery of pedophilia in the ruling class of the elite as well as the pedos of the street. Even in this police state nothing is done about it. No investigation or arrest. Children continue to be trafficked and raped and abused in the home of the brave. Those who are punished by the law are those who expose it. USA, like most other countries, is also collapsing economically. Unable to do trade with countries as most do not accept a backless currency anymore and are moving to real currencies. It is inflating once again and it's only a matter of time before it pops. Obama is trying to pass trade deals before the dollar cannot be lied about any longer. But countries want no part in it and are not accepting the dollar for trade. The entire country is suspended, simply waiting for the elite to decide to let it fall. In Romania, there is a re-election in parliament as they are continuing to reform their government. Now a member of EU, it is still resolving its government corruptions which have led the country into the same degradation we see in Moldova and Bulgaria and most countries in that area. Liviu Dragnea won the election, even after his 2-year prison suspension for voter fraud. Romanians have given in to political corruption. They continue to play the game. They prefer what they are used to. Romania is the richest country in gold resources in EU and still it is being financially bailed out. As is the trend in EU, money has consistently been embezzled by the mafia-controlled politicians and not spent to rebuild the country. So Romania is a hotspot for not only fraud and other political corruptions, but also human trafficking with little policy or help in place to prevent it from happening and continuing. However, last year Romania cut its taxes and has seen a significant economic growth and freedom that comes with it. It is looking more promising than most in that area. Unemployment has dropped and continues to, though still most are in poverty. We hope they will continue to heal. Earlier this year in the UK we saw Theresa May put in position suddenly after puppet David Cameron's script was over. Still a Rothschild pawn, only with a different face. The elite are particularly keen on female leaders this time around. At least people who dress like females. The second she was put in to run the media went wild in support of her. Of course, May has been able to successfully dodge all type of responsibility, blowing off the fact that Reuters news banking was shut off. Still no answers on that muzzle for freedom of speech. She took no effort or attempt to save Lori Love from extradition, though the case was built on assumption instead of fact. Even when she was given proofs of the corruption in UK judicial system, she turned a silent and ever blind eye. She is going to continue delays on Brexit as the elite are moving into that position. Britain is part of the North American Union, not the European Union. They plan to return with Brexit. Perhaps they will break just in time to walk in as savior to their American colonies. Time will tell how they played the hand. Theresa May named Lowell Goddard the new child abuse chair. Goddard, who has successfully covered up the Hampstead pedophile ring for many years. Yes, the elite stronghold of Britain continues on as always, perfectly surrounded and controlled by the pedo elite. Lest we forget, they are also fed censored media. The government performs false flags on the citizens. There are riots and they are overrun by migrants. Spain has been attempting to form a new government, after many corruption scandals destroyed the citizens' confidence in government. It has basically been a continuous line of supposed discussion and deadlock. Amazing how people in power can never communicate. The third election is due for Christmas, and after this one, King Felipe will finally stand up and sort out the political catfighting. However, with each election Spain does, continuing to be unsatisfied with the result. More and more citizens give less shits about the voting process as it is so obviously pointless. Candidate Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy is more of the same bought-out politician. Pedro Sánchez is another one in the spotlight now. Albert Rivera, the face of a new party trying to get noticed, called Ciudadanos. Pablo Iglesias is running from yet another political party. Unfortunately, no party is receiving the support needed, possibly because there are too many, nor are they communicating together in order to form any type of government. Like Greece, Spain has also had an economy collapse but had enough connections to be bailed out. Another member of the EU whose citizens are unemployed and unpaid, protesting, and invaded by immigrants who have only furthered the crisis. Angela Merkel is going to be campaigning for president of Germany again next year. Since the Deutsche Bank is collapsing as we sit here, much of EU currency will go with it. Whatever countries have financial stability, it will come to an abrupt halt when the elite decide to pull the plug on them. Though we have only been able to cover a limited amount of elections in this video, hopefully this has caught you up on some news you missed while you were all being programmed by the American circus in the last few months of 2016. Rest assured much more has happened than this small peek. Iceland, Laos, Brazil, Argentina, Tibet, Ireland and Australia and more have held important elections this year as well. We are seeing the switching of hands. Governments are set up and controlled by the elite, which we can see across the earth does not work. They divide us by religions and political parties within those countries. Government is slavery, and until we are all free we will continue to be sold to the highest bidder. If there is a 2017, perhaps we will use the time we have wisely and destroy them all. Be free, be human. No ruler, no religion, but that is up to you. Make them expect you.
Anonymous is more powerful and relevant than ever. For this force, the voice of none is stronger than the voice of one.
We do not forget. We do not forget. Expect us.